Zarafa, the Giraffe Who Walked to the King by Judith St. George. Illustrations by Britt Spencer. Zurafa was born long ago at a time when wild animals roamed free. Where was she born? In Africa, of course. When Zarafa was 2 months old, she was caught and carried by camel to a small African village. But she didn't fuss. Even as a baby, Zarafa was gentle and quiet. Egypt's ruler planned to give a gift to the King of France. He wanted the two countries to be good friends. Zarafa was the gift, but Zarafa was too young to travel to far-off France, so she lived in the small African village, growing bigger and bigger on camel's milk. The villagers were good to Zarafa. They fed her and took her for walks, and treated her like a princess. Zarafa was happy. Before long, she was big enough to travel, but she had to go all the way to Alexandria in Egypt, much too far away to walk. Zurafa would have to sail down the Nile River in a creaky boat called a felucca. How sad the villagers were to see Zarafa go. Zurafa needed milk on the trip, lots of milk. The sailors brought monkeys on board the felucca. The noisy, funny monkeys climbed up Zurafa's neck and teased her. With Zurafa, her 2 helpers, 3 cows, the sailors, and the monkeys, the felucca was crowded. Not once did gentle Zurafa complain. Sometimes Zurafa's helpers walked her along the bank of the Nile River. She liked that. After all, she was still growing, and stretching her long legs felt good. If only she were tall enough to nibble on the tender top leaves of the acacia trees. Zurafa finally reached Alexandria. The ruler's palace yard was her new home, and the ruler came to love her. The people of Alexandria loved her too. But Zurafa was a gift to the King of France. She couldn't stay long. She had to sail to France across the Mediterranean Sea in a ship with giant sails. She didn't mind setting sail again. She was as gentle and good as ever. Zurafa's new helpers, Hassan and Atir, led her up the ship's gangplank. 3 milk cows came too. At least the funny, noisy monkeys were left behind. Hassan and Atir loved Zurafa, with her beautiful brown eyes and long curly eyelashes. They cut a hole in the deck so that she could stand with her neck and head above the deck and see the whole world. To keep out the sun and the rain, Hassan and Atir raised a tent over her head. Zarafa watched the sailors pull ropes and move sails. At night, she followed the path of the moon rising over the sparkling sea. Did the rolling ship make Zarafa seasick? Not at all. She was a good sailor. One of the cows wasn't so lucky. When the ship landed in
Marseille,
France, the sailors bid goodbye to Zurafa. But Marseille was cold and rainy. Zurafa couldn't travel in such awful weather. She'd always lived where it was hot and dry. She spent the dreary winter in a stable, but she didn't mind. For one thing, Zarafa had grown to love Hassan and Atir. She licked their faces. She loved the milk cows, too. When the skies turned fair, they all walked through the streets of Marseille. The cows marched first. Zarafa happily followed, with Hassan and Atir leading her. The people of Marseille rushed to see Zarafa. Police on horseback were called out to keep her safe. Through it all, Zurafa stayed as unruffled as ever. Maybe she knew how much the people of Marseille loved her, and she loved them. By May, the trees and flowers were blossoming. The King of France was waiting in Paris for his gift. Maybe Zurafa would sail to Paris, or maybe she would travel in a cage pulled by horses. No, Zurafa would walk the 550 miles to Paris on her own 4 feet. Her friends Hassan and Atir would walk with her. So would a famous scientist, Geoffroy Saint-Hilaire, who had a raincoat made especially for her in case it rained. Mr. Geoffroy's carriage led the parade to Paris. The cows, Zarafa, Hassan, and Atir, and an antelope in a cage, another gift to the king, all followed. As Zurafa walked through village after village, shopkeepers, housewives, farmers, and schoolchildren all ran out to see the beautiful African. Though Zurafa never got a chance to take her afternoon nap, she didn't seem to mind. She was delighted to make so many new friends. Wasn't she a wonder? Zurafa walked 2 miles an hour and was tired at the end of the day. Mr. Geoffroy found her a place to keep every night. Sometimes it was a stable with a high roof. Sometimes the roof was raised so that Zurafa wouldn't bump her head. She was happy either way. But it was a long walk. Zurafa tramped over dusty roads, crossed rickety bridges, and climbed steep hills for 41 days. Was she worn out? Not Zurafa. She was healthier than ever, and look how tall she had grown. Over 12 feet. She could easily reach the tender top leaves of the young birch tree. Finally, at long last, Zurafa reached Paris. She had traveled 200 miles by camel. She had sailed 2,000 miles down the Nile River, more than 1,500 miles across the Mediterranean Sea, and walked more than 500 miles from Marseille to Paris on her own 4 feet. Now she would meet the king. But the king had never seen a giraffe before. Would he like his gift? Some people are nervous meeting a king. Zarafa wasn't. She was like royalty herself. The king of France looked at Zurafa, and Zurafa looked at the king. Zurafa put on a show. She walked and trotted and galloped. Her long legs seemed to fly. The king couldn't keep his eyes off her. He was enchanted by his charming gift. The people of France, who had never seen a giraffe either, fell in love with Zurafa. Newspapers sang her praises. Streets, squares, and inns were named for her. Songs, poems, and plays were written about her. Jewelry, fans, wallpaper, and furniture had Zurafa designs. Men wore giraffe hats and ties. Women piled their hair into tall giraffe styles. That winter's flu was called giraffe flu. Hundreds, no, thousands of visitors came to see Zurafa in the king's garden where she lived with Atir, who never left her side. Zurafa had been more than a gift to the king. She had also been a gift to the people of France. Did Zurafa know that she was famous? Probably not. What mattered was that all of France loved her, and she loved all of France. Author's note: the Arabic word Zarafa means charming or lovely one. Thanks for watching, friends.
Click on Tumpsky to subscribe. Click on the next show you want to watch. Please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. You can follow us on Facebook as well. Look down below under Show More. See you soon.